Hello and welcome to episode 856 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, and today we have a very, very special guest. This is a young man who is an actual champion, not a fake fantasy champion like the rest of us. It is Jonathan Safir, formerly director of basketball strategy and analytics for the national champion Florida Gators, recently promoted to assistant coach of the Florida Gators men's basketball team. Jonathan, how's it going? Thanks for doing the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Cool. On today's show, we're going to talk to Jonathan about his journey, analytics in basketball, implementing it at Florida, take a bunch of your questions, etc. Quickly, before we get into it here today, quick reminder, golf season is in full swing. Really happy with the product we put together through projections, sims, ball knowing content. If you're interested, check out the golf tab on EstablishTheRun.com for details. All right, Jonathan, I'm sure people are wondering how a champion like yourself ended up here on this show. I went back through our DMs. First one I had from you was back in January of 2022, just saying, what's up? I just thought you were just a random freak, AKA one of us out there. Then I realized that The Athletic was like writing articles about you. How did you find us? How did we find you in the first place? And how did you make your way here to this podcast? I guess is a good question.
No, that's a great question. I know you guys in Establish the Run because I think I'm a fan of great work in my studies and research to kind of help improve my own craft and what we do here in terms of plus EV decision making and trying to find incremental edges and advantages. I came across you guys and the way you go about things and have annually been incredibly impressed with you guys. And I'm actually a reader of the book right behind you. I spent some time, I don't know, good or bad, reading Skin to Fur. So I was a huge fan of the way you kind of go about your guys' thought processes. And as David Epstein kind of talks about in Range, you can learn a lot of different things from a lot of different thought processes and crafts. And that's kind of been my strategy in terms of helping myself get better and coming across you guys in the thought processes.
Wow, too kind. And one of the dozen readers of the very prestigious novel of our generation, Skin to Fur. I'm very humbled. Okay. Some of these questions are going to sound super personal because Jonathan is living my dream. I know like a lot of people are like, oh, like I want Adam's job. I want to have Adam's life. I want to have Jonathan's life. I am like so obsessed with coaching my kids in basketball right now. I know you played, and I'm so curious about your journey. I know you played for Vassar in college, which is D3, I believe. This was like 2011 to 2015. You played basketball there. What was your basketball background kind of growing up?
Okay, you did your research. 2011
Yeah.
and 2015 is right. I probably ever since my bar mitzvah, I realized playing in the NBA would not necessarily be a realistic goal. So I kind of pivoted towards trying to get into coaching and staying in the game however I possibly could. And I'm Jewish and was told also around the same time that most Jews have a better chance to own a team or be part of an ownership of a team than playing in the NBA. So my gears shifted towards trying to play Division III and also getting a great education, which Vassar provided. Because ultimately, if you want to get into coaching or front office, you're hired to be fired. So was fortunate enough to play at Vassar for 4 years, and then my basketball background and coaching journey kind of intersect there because I went from playing at Vassar to being a grad assistant in the sports management master's program at Columbia. Stayed to be the director of basketball operations out there. Coach Smith, during my time at Columbia, left to go to San Francisco. I was halfway through my master's program, finished my master's program there. A spot came open out west at University of San Francisco. He hired me. That's where I met Coach Smith. After 1 year there, got the job at Washington State. And then Coach Golden got promoted me. We've had a great working relationship and had some great success at San Francisco, helped lead the Dons to the NCAA tournament in 2022. Fortunate enough to land at Florida together. And 3 years later, are national champions.
Incredible. I want to get into all that. I'm curious, like, so you knew you wanted to be a coach when you were at Vassar. What do you study? Like, what kind of classes do you take if you want to be a basketball coach when you grow up?
It's a little unconventional, especially to liberal arts school like Vassar, but I ended up being an American Studies major with an econ minor to get the numbers part, and then the American Studies component allowed me to take as many classes that I thought could possibly relate to sport analytics and our pastime as possible. So kind of try to combine it all.
Yeah. So did you know that this was going to be your angle to get into coaching? Like, I'm going to be the analytics bro. I'm going to be the nerd that helps the team figure out optimal decisions. Did you know that that would be like kind of? And I always tell people when they ask me advice on career, I always say like be as niche as you possibly can, and someone will find value in this knowing about this really seemingly small thing that could be big for them. So yeah, was that your always your goal to be the analytics guy for a basketball coaching staff?
No, but to your point, finding a niche and making yourself marketable or desirable because of a certain specialty or niche is incredibly great. It's really good advice. And I've kind of been fortunate enough to do that, I guess, in a way, but that was not the plan there. The plan at Vassar was to try and break in any way possible. And I guess didn't realize quite how natural statistics and data and understanding the numbers, but then not just understanding how the numbers are derived, but breaking them down in layman's terms that's actionable for either our coaching staff or our players wasn't as necessarily as common as I thought, and could make some headway and help teams in that situation and circumstances. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. And I think one area that we talk about all the time, Coach Golden and I, just when we're watching football on Sundays, is fourth down decision making. It's
Yeah.
it's still low hanging fruit that's ripe for disruption.
Yeah, for sure. So you met Todd Golden at Columbia, I believe. Is that right? Like
No,
2012,
so actually
2014?
he was at Columbia, ironically, with Coach Smith before I was. I was still at
Got
Vassar.
it.
Our paths didn't cross until I went out to San Francisco in 2017.
Okay. Did you know that Todd Golden was going to be a star in coaching? Like some of these guys, I feel like you can tell right away. Like this guy's a head coach. This guy can recruit. This guy can coach. He's going to be at a big time program because when you're at University of San Francisco, I mean that's big time basketball. It's Division 1, but it's not like Power 5. Did you always know that Todd Golden was destined to be a star in the head coaching ranks?
I thought very early on that he had as good of a chance as anybody, but even still, there's still a ton of luck that would go into
Yeah.
for him to be able to showcase just how talented he is in terms of Coach Smith then getting another job a year later, which allowed him to get promoted, building a winning team, and then fortunate enough to get a job like Florida. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. But yes, I could tell early on that he had the it factor.
Yeah. So what's it like when he starts being, I guess, pursued by Florida? You know, you guys are at University of San Francisco. I coaches move all the time in college, all the time. And I understand like some schools are viewed as like a stepping stone. Like I went to Penn State, and a lot of coaches or some coaches tried to use Penn State as a stepping stone to get to a better basketball program. What's it like when he starts being recruited by Florida? And did you expect to go with him from San Francisco to Florida?
Yeah, so pretty early on in that team in that season, we knew we had a pretty good team. And like you said, San Francisco's a really good job. It's a WCC job. It's a great, very good conference, but it's not the Power Five, and it's not the direction the sport was going necessarily in terms of it's college sports is dominated by football, rightly or wrongly, and football money. And San Francisco doesn't have football, so I think Coach knew that if we had a chance to be as good as we thought, he would have potential opportunities. And I'm fortunate enough to have developed a strong enough relationship with him that we had an open and honest line of communication, and I knew that if he was fortunate enough to get an opportunity at a different Power Five or another job, that there'd be a very high likelihood that I would go with him. Yes, but it's obviously that process at the time was obviously new to all of us, and it goes on essentially while during March Madness, and we were fortunate enough to make the tournament. So it just becomes a little tricky. Is not the right word. Unique. It's certainly unique. And then next thing you know, you're playing Murray State on a Friday night or Thursday night in Indianapolis, and 3 days later you're on a flight to Gainesville, Florida. So
Yeah. It's crazy. Okay, so you get to Florida, you're named the director of basketball strategy and analytics. Is that a common job in college basketball or even in the NBA? Like, does every big program have this job? And is this a job in the NBA? I don't even know.
no, it's a great question. Is it's more uh, Coach Golden and I have an incredible relationship, and it was more so kind of a jack of all trades hybrid, whatever he needs, however I can help the program. And at the time, they're only allowed to have 3 assistant coaches. Now there's 5, and it was just a way to help bring more talent into the program and have a talent infusion on the staff in terms of having 3 assistant coaches and then somebody like myself. And at the time, we had Torian Green as director of player development. So I think it is not necessarily a common job. I think it's ideas like director of basketball strategy and analytics or general managers in college sports are becoming more and more common, especially with the advent of the transfer portal and NIL and things of that ilk. But at the time, it was certainly not common. No.
Yeah. So what's like the day to day of this job? You said it's like jack of all trades. Are you mostly in the spreadsheets? Are you at practice? Like what's the day to? Are you out there recruiting? Like what's the day to day of the job?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Definitely at practice, helping out with film and game planning and in season. I guess it depends in season or out of season. In season, uh, it's all basketball. It's coaching. It's numbers. It's like you said. It's in the spreadsheets. It's taking information, deciphering it, and having that open and honest and direct dialogue with Coach Golden about how we can implement certain things. It's helping out practice, game planning, in-game decision making, substitution patterns, certain foul situations, make sure we're optimizing low-hanging fruit like 2-for-1s. Then it turns quickly to the offseason and it becomes putting your GM hat on, and it's roster building, it's negotiations with agents, it's cap management, it's finding out information and intel on who is actually being recruited by who and what offers are perceived to be real and what aren't. And then hopefully you have some time in August to go. Last August I got married and had a honeymoon, but hopefully this August we'll be able to vacation a little bit, and that's kind of the job.
Yeah. Where do you get your data from? Like when I was playing basketball growing up, one of our assistant coaches on my high school team actually charted deflections. Was a big one that they were like after every game. I don't even know why they did it. Cause like I don't know if they did anything actionable about, but they were like, oh, you know, Garrett led the team in deflections tonight. Great job, Garrett. I don't know if they did anything with that. I guess they were just trying to emphasize that was like a stat that our coaches thought was important. But again, that was all hand charting. I assume you guys aren't hand charting, but I could be wrong. Where are you guys getting data from that you use?
You'd be surprised. We're hand charting a little bit in practice. We use what we call our hustle stats, and that's about 50 50 stats that we keep as an internal metric system that's designed for process over result and as a teaching tool, right? So if I make a great pass to you and you miss a layup in the box score, there's no reward for that. For even though I made the right play, should be an assist. In our internal hustle stat system, assists are worth +3, and in that scenario, I'd get a virtual assist, which is also worth +3. We do things like tracking blockouts to miss blockout ratio. So if one of our big guys isn't rebounding very well, we can kind of find out, is it a process oriented thing, or is he just kind of getting unlucky and the ball's not bouncing his way? Hey, he's got a 3-to-1 blockout to miss blockout ratio in games, but in practice it's 5-to-1. So he is kind of missing a couple more blockouts in games. And that's why he's getting less rebounds. So we use it to help inform decision making and to kind of be directionally correct. And we do all manually tabulate it. So we have 3 coaches, one in charge of offense, one in charge of defense, and one in charge of rebounding that we'll use to tabulate it. But that's just one tool we use. Then obviously we'll take sites like Ken Pom, Bart Torvik, various sites, college CBB analytics. We'll take readily available information. We are not spending a ton of time creating our own data, except for the aforementioned hustle stats, which is a massive Excel document. But we're not really spending our time coding or really getting behind the scenes and too granular too much. But we will take the readily available information. And we think our secret sauce is kind of deciphering and dissecting said information. Because as we always talk about, it doesn't matter how much we know, it's how much that our players can think about and know on the fly. It doesn't matter whether Auburn's best player is 35% going left versus 55% going right. It doesn't matter if we know that. All that matters is if they're way worse going left, we want our guys knowing, hey, we got to force them left.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be more of this job now that you guys won the national championship? It's kind of getting out there more. Do you think every school is going to end up with a director of strategy and analytics going forward?
I don't know if every school will. I think more and more high majors and the schools with bigger monies and staff salaries will probably spend more time making sure they're optimizing their staff and having more specialties and or front office types with the GM and things of that nature. I do think whenever there's a breakthrough in the NFL, kind of like the Gators just had data-wise in college basketball, I think, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but the lowest hanging fruit, I think, in all of sports is the fourth down decision making and kicking field goals versus going for it, going for 2 versus going for 1, punting at plus midfield. Like I always think, we laugh about it, But if the rules of football were invented today, and you were told you had 4 downs to get 10 yards and consistently move the chains, uh, or your other option was to punt, but everybody used to always just go for it. Teams would be going for it basically any time past their own 30, as
Yeah.
long as it was like 4th and 6 or 7 and shorter. The idea of willingly punting the ball to the other team would be laughed at and looked at as a foreign concept. Yet here we are consistently seeing teams on 4th and 4 or 4th and 3 at the 48 punting for plus 28 yards of net field position.
Yeah.
Um, give billion-dollar entities just giving up 5 or 6 or 7 or 10% win probability, win equity in a 16 or in a 17 game season is I think is ripe for disruption.
For sure. But I think what people would say is that, yes, we know that this is right, but from a culture perspective, from a players buying in perspective, from a coaches buying in perspective, it's harder to convince them to do the right thing. So, I mean, have you run into that? Like, there's so many stories of being like, hey, we have this 4-person analytics team in the NFL, and that's great, and they have all this great insights, but we can't get the coach to implement it. We can't get the players to buy into it because they're like, what does this nerd know about playing in the NFL? So yeah, how do you think about the relationship between players and the analytics staff?
I think that's where Coach Golden's the best of the best, is that he understands the numbers. So when we talk about it, he has full conception of it, and then he's super relatable to the players. So he's not going in there talking like a nerd or talking in a way that they'll laugh at. He's kind of just relaying information in a way that they understand. For example, uh, relaying information in a way that produces buy-in. A good example of that is when we work on our 5-on-0 dummy offense, we obviously encourage and want threes, rim twos, and free throws. All that means when we're putting in our offensive packages and practicing, we just make sure the possession ends with either a rim two or a three. We're not encouraging our guys to shoot 2 or 3 dribble pull-ups in practice when we're installing our offense and implementing our offense. And I'm not saying other teams do or don't, but it's little things like that that gets them to buy in without them even necessarily being conscientious of it.
Yeah. Um, okay, I want to talk about some in-game stuff. How much are you guys using data for in-game? And obviously I want to talk about the fouling thing because I think that caught kind of national attention. I want to talk about the fouling thing in a second, but what about like who starts, the rotation, specific plays to run, when to press, when not to press?
Sure.
How much is Todd Golden like turning to you and being like, hey, should we be pressing this spot? Hey, should we be changing our rotation in this spot, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so we'll meet before each game to kind of discuss our rotations, and it's more or less the same, give or take. Obviously, he'll use some feel and game flow for it to be very similar, especially across the first half. Obviously, the second half will be a little bit predicated on foul trouble and first half performance. But one easy area, another thing that we think is low hanging fruit in the college game is even in the NBA game too. You can't take fouls home with you. So if our best player picks up 2 fouls in the first half, we're still oftentimes we'll sit him down for 30 seconds to cool his head and gain his composure so he doesn't pick up his third quickly. But we'll put him right back in there because the odds are that player's not going to foul out. And if he ends the game with 3 fouls, yet only plays 22 minutes when you want him to play 32 minutes, you're just willingly punting 10 minutes. The final 10 minutes of the first half objectively are just as important and valuable as the final 10 minutes of the second half. So that's one area. And then I think we'll have a game plan idea, like going into each game, kind of a plan A and plan B, and maybe even a plan C. If so and so's not working, maybe we'll try a bigger lineup, or if so and so's not working, maybe we'll try a smaller lineup, or so and so's not working, so maybe we need to press to speed up the game or go into a zone, or different strategies and tactics that we could employ, but oftentimes they're discussed ahead of time. So that way, if I or another staff member brings them up, coach knows that it's being brought to his attention with thought beforehand, not just in the heat of the moment.
I think some people who are like not against this stuff, but are hesitant to implement it would be like, there's stuff that we can't quantify, right? Like, let's say Jonathan is a great floor leader and he has our team organized. We always run the right play. We're always in the right set when Jonathan's out there at point guard. And it doesn't show up in the stats, maybe, or maybe it does. There's some stats that it does. But yeah, what about all the intangible stuff that the ball knowers would say the data can't capture on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I think that plays a role for sure. But I think that's part of using our feel and relationships with our guys to understand uh, certain elements of that, right? Like, of course, even if our best player is struggling, uh, we're probably going to finish the game with him and, for lack of a better term, live or die by their success. But coach them up so that just because they're missing shots, we need them to compete their ass off defensively and things like that. So yeah, I think that's all part of it.
All right. Some specific questions here. I believe there was a foul. You guys fouled down, I think it was 5 or 6 against Texas Tech with like 3 minutes left. Now, most coaches don't start fouling until there's like 40 seconds left, 30 seconds left. That's when they start fouling and trying to put the other team on the line. I think it kind of opened some people's eyes when you guys started fouling with 3 minutes left, or it made at least one foul with 3 minutes left. Can you talk us through the thought process there and why start fouling so early in the game?
Yeah. So in the Texas Tech game, I'm pulling up the exact situation right now so I can get the time and score exactly right. We were down um, 70. Where was the timeout? We were down 75-69. We just made a three with 2:50 left to cut it to 6 with 2:50 to go. And they were in the 1-and-1. And they had I don't remember the exact percentage off the top of my head, but I believe 60% free throw shooter. So quick math on that is that a 60% free throw shooter in the 1-and-1 means there's only a 60% chance he gets the second shot. So he's making the first one 60% of the time, 0.6. The odds he gets the second shot are 0.6. 0.6 times 0.6 is 0.36.
Mm-hmm.
Add those two together, it's still less than a point per possession. 0.6 plus 0.36 is 0.96. So if we followed, I think in this scenario, ideally it was going to be JT Toppin, we're probably giving them a point, right? And it's 75-69. We're struggling to stop them. There's 2:50 left. They're in the 1-and-1. We want to make sure we're optimizing our situations where they have a chance, where we have a chance in the 1-and-1 for them to get 0 points by missing the first shot, essentially like a turnover. And really that late in the game, we're trying to increase variance as soon as possible. We believe too many teams wait until down by 5, 6, 7, 8, wait until there's 35 seconds left before start fouling or doing things like that. We're playing the foul game and eventually and ultimately run out of time. This scenario, we can increase variance, we can add possessions to the game, and we can dictate who we want to foul as opposed to them ensuring they get the ball. If they know we're going to foul them late in the game, they're going to get the ball to their best free throw shooters. In these scenarios, they're not expecting us to foul them with 2:50 to go. They're going to make sure, as they're running their offense normally, that their best player or two are going to touch the ball, who also happen to be one of the worst free throw shooters. Let's capitalize and follow them. Now, having said that, more often than not, it won't work out. Just because we're going to follow a 60% free throw shooter, 60% of the time, they're still going to make a basket, make the shot, and get a point.
Yeah.
And where Coach Golden's elite is he understands the process over results. We're increasing variance and probably increasing our win probability as a result. But more often than not, it's still not going to work out. We're still going to lose the game. It just so happened that he missed the front end of the 1-and-1. We came down and made a three. We did it again. The different person missed the front end of 1-and-1 again, made a three, and now we're tied. And now they're tightening up a little bit, thinking of having second thoughts, whatever it may be. And now we've done what we wanted to do, which was make it a tie game as quickly as possible by kind of using our data and unconventional methods.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, my first thought would be tell the guys, hey, let's get a stop. Let's just get a stop and go down and score. But again, as you said, that's gonna eat up a lot of time. We could end up fouling anyways. We could end up fouling one of their good free throw shooters. Also. Mr. Raz, this is kind of a related question. Mr. Raz said, anyway, the Condon foul on Tugler with 2 minutes left in the championship game was an order from the coaching staff slash analytic department. Any comment on that foul? I don't even remember that one specifically.
That's always the catch-22. I'll backtrack. I know your question 2 questions ago was about more in-game analytics and prep with regards to substitutions and things of that nature. But we've really tried to be in the cutting edge with against BYU in 2021 or 2022. We followed them in the 1-and-1 up by 2 with the shot clock off, giving them an opportunity to make 2 free throws and tie the game. Our logic being if it's a poor free throw shooter who's not expecting us to follow them, the odds he makes the 2 are not that high. And then if he does make the 2, for us to lose the game, he has to make the 2 free throws. We have to not score as time expires and then lose in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a 3-part sequence of events that would need to happen. And we then did some studies on it with following up by 1, 2, or tied in the shot clock with the shot clock off, depending on whether you're in single bonus or double bonus and when it's optimally used. So we've done that. We've also been creative in following at the end of halves. So, for example, if you hold for the last shot, the last possession of a half with the shot clock off, that's worth about 0.9. It's a little lower than other possessions because the shot clock's off, so the defense knows when you're going to shoot. You're probably going to shoot with less than 5 seconds, so it's worth a little bit less. If, say, it's a 60% free throw shooter again, or even 70%. Just use 60 for this example. If we foul you in the 1-and-1, we're giving you 0.96 points expected, which we know is more than 0.9. So we're willingly giving you more points. However, what we're doing is trading you getting more points for us now getting that last possession. So even if our last possession under 10 seconds is only worth 0.8, we're now losing that little 20-second period, 0.96 to 0.8, as opposed to just losing it 0.9 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And now you might not think it matters a lot, but over the course of a season, over the course of a game, the opportunity to increase the variance, add another possession for us, it all adds up. Now, to answer your question with regards to Tugler, Condon's foul on Tugler, it's always a back and forth with us. Usually big men are worse free throw shooters, but if you foul them off the ball, it could be called an intentional foul. It leads to refs. It's very subjective, and it leads to refs' discretion.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing we all know is that nobody wants to give the refs more power and have more discretion to influence outcomes of games. So we try and teach our guys not to necessarily do that off the ball. In Condon's case, it was not necessarily a directive, but we had told them with 3 minutes to go at the under 4 timeout that here are the worst free throw shooters, the worst couple of free throw shooters in situations where you can follow them. We're still in the 1-and-1. If we need to do that, let's do it. And he knew Tugler was a poor free throw shooter. I don't think he was going to sit there and try and intentionally foul him. I think he was trying to be physical and make a good play in terms of hitting him off the spot. And we were absolutely okay with the foul. So I don't want to say it was a directive from the bench, but it was not all. It wasn't unintentional either.
Super interesting. Michael had a question. He says, what does Jonathan think about Alabama's approach in the Sweet 16? They made 51 threes, or they took 51 out of their 66 shots were 3-pointers. This has obviously been the big story in the NBA. Everybody's shooting 3-pointers. Some people say it's too many 3-pointers. The game's out of control. But what do you think about what Alabama did in the tournament and in the Sweet 16, shooting so many threes?
Yeah, I think my first reaction after watching it was I'm not sure why or how BYU would want to play drop coverage against Alabama, which enabled and allowed them to shoot so many threes, and why they didn't necessarily adjust out of it at all or even sooner. But I think they got really good looks, and they obviously made a ton of them. Yeah. I think to your point with the NBA and college, where it's entirely different, is the best players in the NBA impact winning at such a high level. You basically need to have a handful of 5 or 6 or 7 guys each year to have a realistic chance to win a title. The same could be true in college, but who those 5 or 6 or 7 players are each year are not necessarily known. It's known going into an NBA season. You need to have a Jokic or a prime LeBron or a Curry or a Giannis or whomever. It's very hard to have a team full of 30 outside the top 30 win a title, right? You need to have a superstar, right? And in doing so, once you have the superstar, you're then obviously trying to win on the margins with a relatively equal playing field after that. And the best way to win on the margins is obviously, to your point, shoot a lot of threes, which what we've seen in the NBA game. In college, and where I think it's a big difference from college and the NBA, is because the talent isn't always equal. At the University of Florida, we can quite frankly recruit better players than we could at the University of San Francisco. We're trying to recruit the biggest, best athletes, and we actually play 3 guards and 2 bigs, which is, I know, totally antithetical to today's modern NBA. But in doing so, we love shooting threes, but shooting threes also increases your variance. We'd rather reduce the variance and get rim twos and to the free throw line and also shoot good threes, but not necessarily lead the country in 3-point attempts, because the best way to raise your floor and reduce variance is to live at the rim and live at the free throw line. And obviously in the NBA, people try and do that, but also the talent is so equal and the players are so good that it often leads to shooting a lot of threes as well, because we all know a 3 is better than a mid-range 2.
Should we push the 3-point line back in both college and the NBA? I mean, I don't really mind it that much, but some people are like, oh, I hate the NBA. They shoot so many threes. And for some of these guys that are really good in college, like, it's a pretty short line. Like, they can shoot a really high percentage if you're a good shooter from the college line. Do you think it is worth exploring moving back the 3-point line?
I don't think. I mean, they've consistently moved the college line back. I'm not sure how much further you can move it back. You'd have to move it back. If you moved it back again, you would probably have to move the NBA 3-point line back.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think so. I think obviously the players are getting better, the skills getting better. If anything, maybe widen the court so we don't have a corner 3 that's a shorter shot. But I'm not a expert in that subject.
Yeah. Okay. A bunch of people ask questions about how NIL has affected what you guys do. Sam W. from our team asked how the transfer/NIL rules change your day-to-day duties. How do you think NIL is going to continue to evolve? Ian asked, how has NIL changed Florida's approach to court coaching discipline for players? I think the people have this idea in their head that thanks to NIL now, it's basically just professional sports. It's basically just like free agency. If guys don't like Coach Golden, if they don't like Jonathan, they're just gonna be like, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, or they're gonna hold out for more money, or whatever's gonna happen. Any thoughts on how NIL change affected your job and what you guys are doing on the analytics side, if at all?
Yeah, I think it's certainly changed our day to day. It's certainly changed our off season and our player evaluations and our recruiting. The ability to transfer uh, every single off season essentially allows each player to have unrestricted free agent, become an unrestricted free agent every year, which obviously um, makes it difficult to build continuity. I
Yeah.
think what it's done in one of the, to your point, to one of your earlier points, an advantage we have is as a result of that, we've doubled down on, it sounds cliche, but culture and making sure our players like our coaching staff and the environment we have here and developing really good relationships with the players so that they won't necessarily leave and we don't have to necessarily be the highest bidder to retain them, but that they want to be here because playing at the University of Florida, competing for national championships, playing in the SEC, playing in a packed O-Dome in Gainesville is an awesome opportunity. But we also know that others may come calling. But if they love it here and are drawn to being here, they won't want to leave. And that's kind of our sell is once we get them here is make it such a welcoming and encouraging environment with great player development, our great, incredible resources here at the University of Florida that they ultimately don't want to leave. But yes, I think NIL obviously plays a factor. The transfer portal obviously plays a factor, and NIL will obviously continue to evolve. It's evolving on a day-to-day basis. Who knows how this house settlement plays out? Who knows how rev share plays out? I do think long term, ultimately, whether it's a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, players will have to have a seat at the table and collectively bargain, and then they can be treated as employees and cut and or signed to contracts that are either multi-year, 1 year, whatever it is, so that there is a little bit more uh, regulatory status and rules surrounding the landscape. But
Yeah.
I think we'll get there in time.
I mean, it strikes me that it's more work for the coaching staff, whereas before you just had to know everything about the top high school prospects, right? And Florida's only recruiting, whatever, top 100 players or whatever. So you need to
Mhm.
know the best 100 high school players. Now I feel like you need to know every college player that's out there and have an analytics profile and a scouting profile on every college player that's out there because you don't know some kid that could be really good from some West Coast conference school and he might be good enough to play for Florida and you might want to have to like go get him. So it strikes me as like, man, there's a lot of scouting that has to be done now for way more players. Is that the right thought?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more scouting that has to get done, both from the college game internationally and also high school scene. Tools like KenPom are kind of our initial evaluation tool, their offensive rating and their usage to kind of see if they're worth further pursuing for us to be interested in a player. They'll need to have a good O rating, high usage, and then we'll look at other metrics and stats and other analytical profiles. And they'll have to pass the eye test. We'll have to watch them and watch the film. We can't blind take anybody, but those are kind of our processes. We will not really look at counting stats.
Yeah. If I had a kid, and I'm not referring to my kid, believe me, but if I had a kid that was like a big time basketball prospect, uh, is it better these days to like go to a small school, say you go to San Francisco and you play really well, and then you'd be like, prove yourself at San Francisco, and then try to go and get a scholarship from somewhere like Florida? I feel like I guess my question is has the high school recruiting scene changed where it's not as important to big time programs anymore because you can just go pick off some good college kids once you see them play at the college level already?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely we now take one or two, maybe three freshmen each year, as opposed to if it wasn't the rules there were, we'd be taking 3 to 5 every year.
Hmm.
So we're certainly taking less. But I think no two situations are alike. For some players, it makes more sense to get into our system earlier and develop with us and us to be able to be around you every day and coach you and grow together. For others, I think it could make more sense to go to a lower level, produce good numbers, and be maybe sought after as a sophomore or junior. But obviously, there's higher risk going to a lower level. If you go to a lower level and don't produce, your options are a lot less. If you come to a higher level and break through, the sky's the limit. If you come to a higher level and struggle, you can certainly usually go down a level.
Yeah. Okay. Last question I have here before we get to listener questions. What we're trying to do at ETR is just trying to predict how players will perform in the future. A lot of the way we do that is trying to combine
Us
model
too,
based.
bro.
Yeah, well, exactly. Model based stuff combined with like ball knowing stuff. Uh, is there anything that you can think of that we can do better, whether it be on football or basketball or whatever? Is there any hints that you can give us to hopefully try to predict how players will perform better in the future?
No, I think the thought processes are in parallel and similar, and it's all about trying to optimize with plus EV decision making. And I don't think there's exact. It's an inexact science, and I think that's true when you're trying to make predictions and projections of any kind. And obviously, it's our job to go try and identify how a transfer from a lower level will transfer up, just like it's your job to go try and project certain minutes or production or performance. And I think there's no all you can do is take the data and information you have available and try and make the most informed and optimal decision you can with the data you have at the time. And then an important part too is you can't live in regret if you make a mistake or don't get it perfect. You try and learn from it and move forward, because we're not all going to get it right. Like we talked about with our decision making processes and some of our strategies, is that we understand just because we're increasing our odds to do something better, there's still a high likelihood that it's wrong.
Yeah.
We have to be okay. We have to be okay with that. We have to trust that process and then live with the result.
What about, is there anything like you can think of, and I don't want you to give away anything that you think might be an edge in the future, but anything in the future, like imagine if you were before Daryl Morey or before the Rockets started shooting or before the Warriors started shooting a ton of threes, when they were like the only ones doing that, it was a huge edge. Now that everybody in the NBA is shooting threes, it's not anything on the basketball front you think might be coming on the analytics front that might be edges or change the game.
No, well, of course, we'd rather keep those in house, but I'd love to share for our fellow and diehard listeners and passionate sportsmen. I think my earlier point about the difference in the college game to the NBA, specifically in college, where at a place like at high majors, you can play two bigs. There's no defensive three in the key. Uh, the talent is not always necessarily equal. If you can just ram the rim, for lack of a better term, own the paint and reduce your variance, you have a great chance to raise your floor and be very successful with just mashing, mauling teams inside the paint at the free throw line, and then shooting quality threes when they're open. But you don't need to be in the top 10% of teams shooting threes necessarily. Whereas in the NBA, most of the best offenses are directly correlated with teams that shoot the highest percentage or have the most 3-point attempts. So it's two different sports in a way, because of how rosters can get constructed, salary caps, and obviously in the NBA on an annual basis, knowing who the best players are. And just, we all know the reality is, it's other than quarterback, the quarterback's the most important position in sports. After that, no player has a greater impact on teams winning or losing than the best. It's strong link sport than the best players in basketball.
Yeah,
If
for
you take
sure.
Steph Curry off the Warriors, they're not making the playoffs. If you take
Oh,
Jokic off the Nuggets, they're not making the playoffs. That's not the same in hockey or even football, besides a quarterback. So
yeah. Oh, I've seen some Nuggets games where I think to myself, I don't know how the Nuggets would win a game without Jokic. Like they're yeah, exactly. It's crazy. Okay. A few listener questions before we get out of here. First one from our own Mark Dankenbring, a very good basketball player himself. By the way, you kind of touched on this already, but what unique aspect of college basketball does he think offers the most edge or potential exploitation compared to the NBA level? You mentioned no defensive 3 seconds. You only get 5 fouls in college. I don't know if you think that makes a difference. Closer 3-point line, we talked about a little bit. Single versus double bonus, to name a few. But yeah, any other college versus NBA differences you think make a difference?
yeah, I think that's a great question by Mark, and we've kind of hit on all of that throughout, right? I think no defense 3 seconds makes a huge difference. I'm not sure 5 versus 6 fouls matters too much, because it's 48 minutes versus 40. But then closer 3-point line, and then single versus double bonus. We've kind of talked about single versus double bonus with different free throw strategies and fouling strategies late in games. I think all of those play a big role, and I think the biggest one that is unique and different, I'm repeating myself now, like I said, is just the star player theory, where you know who the best
Yeah,
players are on an annual basis in the NBA, and the edge you create if you don't have one of those stars to shoot more threes. Whereas in college, you can reduce that variance. It's all, I think a lot of it has to do with the variance.
for sure. Question two from Rick. He says, how does Florida value highly rated freshmen versus developing 3 to 4 year talent? I always think about this too. Like, would you recruit a kid who's maybe not in NBA? You don't think he'll leave to go to the NBA in year 1 or year 2 because you're like, he's not the most talented kid. Maybe he's not an NBA player, but he's going to be a really good player for us for 3 to 4 years. We're going to have him here for 3 to 4 years. How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think no two situations are exactly alike. It's about talking to the player. It's about talking to the family, and making sure that they'd be happy here at Florida if they wouldn't necessarily play as a freshman. If that's the case and they're willing to learn and grow in our system, we love the multi-year player. But we also know if they're not treated well, don't have a good experience, or are tempted with a different offer if they don't play, they're an unrestricted free agency every year, so they could certainly leave. With the highly rated freshmen, you can invest in one of those, but if you do so, you need to hit on them. They need to be like a Derek Queen or a Cooper Flagg or a Con Knipple. You can't take a highly rated freshman and then miss. So it's obviously a little bit tricky, but it's all about how you want to allocate your resources and trust your evaluations. And yes, the high end freshman usually leads to great results, but not always.
Question 3 from Fan of NY. He says, would love to know how Jonathan thinks the NIL/transfer portal will disrupt the club scene for high school. It's known pipelines have been created from clubs to colleges, but now with the portal, does he just see big name programs looking to create a partnership with mid majors and JUCOs? Yeah, I kind of already asked this question, but yeah, any thoughts for people out there who love the club scene in high school basketball?
I don't have a great answer for exactly how that might work or play out, but I do think in the not so distant future, I know like European teams, there's loans and things like that from lower clubs to higher clubs, and maybe you develop partner programs and have some sort of loan system here. But I think we're still a little bit away from that.
Yeah. All right. Last question from Big Easy. Sounds like a Florida fan here. He says, will you please never leave Gators men's basketball? Can you commit here on this show, Jonathan, to never leaving Florida men's basketball? They want you to stay forever. It's pretty amazing that like the fans actually know the analytics director and like value what you did for the team. That to me, that just shows that we've come a long way, period. But yes, he wants you to promise that you'll never leave the University of Florida.
Well, we've come a long way, period. It shows how passionate and awesome the fans are here in Gainesville and Gator Nation. It's an incredible group. And then to your point, I won't be leaving anytime soon. I just got promoted. So
yeah,
my wife's happy here. I love it here. And we love being Gators.
All right. That's great. And yeah, you guys are going to have a run for a long time here, as not just from developing talent perspective, but obviously thinking about game in a sharp way when I suspect a lot of other major programs aren't. All right. Appreciate it so much, Jonathan. I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, my Twitter is my name, at Jonathan Safir.
At Jonathan Safir on the Twitter machine. All right. Thanks so much for the time, man. Huge congrats on the national title. Huge congrats on being named the assistant coach and bringing an actual positive spin to the nerd analytics space with the rest of us. For Jonathan, producer Luke, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.